welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I'm Taylor Rockwell. With me, for the first time in a while, for a show, I've got a man on a party island up late, but not because he's partying. It's Daryl Grove. Hello, Daryl.
Hello, yes, I might be the only person in Ibiza who's up at 4 a.m. because they just watched USA v Trinidad in a World Cup Qualifier. Hello.
In my mind, everyone else there is like kind of drunk, maybe a little bit out of it, partying, being loud, and you're like, guys, settle down. I need to see what Christian Pulisic does next.
Christian Pulisic is a natural high. Christian Pulisic's goals are a natural high.
Yeah, man. So I wanted to talk to you. Obviously, we are doing our quick take, hot take, as we are wont to do. It's strange to be doing it in the studio without you, but I am in the studio, and I felt like that was only fitting for a World Cup qualifier, and I feel like we've got a decent amount to discuss.
Oh yeah, let's go for it then.
All right. So first up, what did you make? We'll start with the beginning, as Pert Hapley might say.
Yay.
What did you make of that lineup? Was it basically exactly what you expected? Were you surprised by it at all?
It sort of settled the debate / argument / friendly discussion that you and I were having about Fabian Johnson's best side and what Bruce Arena thought about it.
Yeah.
He definitely seemed to think that didn't work as well as he wanted with Fabian on the right last time. So he switched into the left, got Nagbe on the right. So, and the end result was what? Nagbe had a better game and Johnson had a worse game, I want to say. But so you're really asking me what happened in the first 10, 20 minutes when it was a bit slow?
Yeah.
And the one thing I saw was I saw Josie and I saw Dempsey both like trying to get everybody else to come forward, trying to wave people forward to help with the pressure. And no one seemed all that keen. And like Michael Bradley was sitting very, very deep.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the US was scared to go press and win the ball back. And to me, that's part of the reason that we had such a slow start.
Yeah. The vibe that I got was that you had like almost a front three because you had Deuce, you had Josie, and then you had Christian Pulisic pushed very far forward. And I tweeted something about this at halftime, that it felt like the three of them were supposed to be this kind of initial block that would force Trinidad out wide. So they couldn't play direct through the middle. They couldn't really find much link-up play. You force them out wide and you slow them down a little bit. But I think because the three of them, either because the three of them hadn't done that very much or didn't quite know how to execute it yet, you kept having these gaps. And because, as you said, Michael Bradley was sitting so deep, Trinidad kind of kept bypassing that for those first 15 minutes or so, as you said. I think after that, they started to settle in a little bit. Pulisic sat in a little bit deeper and kind of blocked off those options. And from then on, I think Trinidad had more difficulty finding chances.
Yes, if you think about it tactically, if the front three are going to do that, but Trinidad are finding a way around it, then you would have needed Johnson and Nagbe to come and join the press, right? But then that leaves 5 people pressed high and then just Michael Bradley alone in midfield.
Yeah.
So you can almost say the problem was Pulisic in a way. Like not like maybe decisions he made, but the thing he was asked to do was maybe not that well suited.
Yeah, I think that could be it. It could be that maybe Bradley was a little bit cautious in stepping forward, or maybe Arena told him to sit deep. But I did feel like looking at that roster.
Too deep for me.
Yeah, I felt like looking at that lineup, as soon as I saw it, I was a little bit concerned because obviously I've talked to a couple different people this week, aside from yourself, and the kind of consensus was that maybe the U.S. would need a little bit more support in there. And so that's where I think Matt Doyle, and then obviously Jeff Carlisle today, kind of figured it would be this lineup roughly, but thought maybe there would just be a little bit more support for Michael Bradley in the middle. And instead, it did seem like he was still sort of isolated, and then when he's sitting deep, very much isolated in terms of not being able to find that pass. So I'm not sure if that was specific instructions for Bradley failing to execute, or other players not doing their jobs. It's kind of tough to say.
I think we can definitely say that second half, either Bradley decided or Arena decided that Bradley should step forward a bit and get more involved farther forward, both in the attack and in the defending, because the first goal comes from Bradley stepping high, basically, and winning the ball back, right?
Yeah, basically he kind of wins the ball. It forces Trinidad to boot it clear. And from that, it settled and then brought right back down, and then the U.S. are able to score. And I think, it's much more aggressive in terms of that press, in terms of putting them under pressure, but it's also much more aggressive in terms of getting the ball forward and finding your passes. And that was something Arena talked about at halftime, that they were being still a little bit too slow passing the ball and getting it forward. And you could see both those goals come about from a very direct approach.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. And so the first goal for me, it definitely starts with the Bradley step. Then I think Yedlin is the one that settles it after it's cleared sort of haphazardly, which was always good to see, right? Because we were always a little worried about Yedlin's touch, but it was today, right?
Yeah.
And then, to me, it's all about that Darlington Nagbe thing when he's just slowly dribbling. I'm not sure who the defender was. And then he just turns on the jets and accelerates. And I love seeing that sort of confidence and just willingness to be like, all right, I'm going to be the man. Darlington Nagbe is going to be the man. I'm going to take you on. I'm going to open up some space.
And you say that, and obviously it's going to be Christian Pulisic is the man of the match. He scores 2 goals. That's what's going to happen. I really think, and it's maybe controversial, Darlington Nagbe, I think, was my man of the match. Because of what you just mentioned. I mean, it's going to be Christian Pulisic, if I'm being honest. But I feel like those 2 goals really...
But goals wins not everything, right?
Yeah. And if you look at what Nagbe did in this, I mean, that goal is him getting the ball, driving at people, continuing the run, then making a smart pass. Then throughout the game, I kept seeing him do a really good job of dropping in defensively. So sometimes Villafaña would get caught out a little bit, but Nagbe was always sitting there, or Nagbe was always making that covering run. And it just felt like he, across the board, did exactly what he needed to do, and I was very, very impressed by everything he saw. But yeah, with that first goal, I mean, it's all about that Darlington Nagbe.
I know you said Villafaña because Nagbe ended up on the left, but I think for like 60 minutes or so, he was in front of Yedlin, right?
True.
So he's the right mid and Yedlin's the right back. And there were so many times when there'd be the left winger going down there, and you just see this like perfect pair of Yedlin and Nagbe cutting off all the angles. It was such a pleasure to see. It just looked like something that... It looked like 2 guys who, you know, had played together, even though for most of their careers they played on opposite sides of Cascadia.
Yeah, so I was very happy to see him. Even from the outset, he was the one who was kind of like not afraid to turn when he had pressure, not afraid to turn 20 yards from goal and try to like pick his pass, and not sort of like drop the ball back immediately and make that safe outlet pass. So it felt like Nagbe was the one who was like kind of really up for it and knew that he had something to prove, and I think he did that. And I mean, you go back to that goal, the first goal, it's driving forward, playing it to Deuce, then Deuce has that really nice little chip ball, and it did seem like the biggest contributions from both Clint Dempsey and Josie Altidore in this game were 2 chipped passes, because in this one it's Deuce chips it over, Nagbe again settles it, drops it to Yedlin. Yedlin finds Christian Pulisic, and it's a goal. And then for the second one, it's Josie Altidore chipping in Christian Pulisic, who drives forward on the counterattack, and it's a Pulisic goal.
The other key to the first goal is DeAndre Yedlin.
Yep.
I rewatched it. I got a chance to rewatch it thanks to Fox Soccer to Go. And he sort of times the overlap perfectly.
Yep.
And that's the thing that we haven't always said about Yedlin, right? Sometimes he's been sort of too far forward too early.
Yep.
And he just like makes the decision and takes off at a certain point. So he arrives at exactly the moment that Nagbe needs him for that layoff pass. And then his low ball in is kind of perfect, right? Because if Pulisic hadn't got it, I saw Clint Dempsey sliding in as well. He might have got it.
Yeah. I want to add there, though, it spoke volumes to me. I went back and watched that goal a couple different times. And not trying to like dismiss the efforts of Josie Altidore or Clint Dempsey, but if you watch it, Clint Dempsey is in pole position to get that goal. But Pulisic is just a little bit quicker and a little bit faster to react. And Josie Altidore makes the wrong run. He makes that run into the box too soon. And so then he's kind of standing and he drifts to the back post. Now, admittedly, he takes a player with him, so that's good. But if you look at those 3 players who are getting your goals, you've got one who's a little bit slow to react, one who reacts like too quickly at the wrong time, and then you've got the one, like Goldilocks, it's just right.
Isn't that the value of having 3 guys in the box?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
absolutely.
The big thing for me there is we end up with 3 attackers in the box. I wrote it down. Pulisic, Dempsey, Altidore, PDA. That's our strike force. You've got the BBC in Madrid. You've got MSN in Barcelona. We've got PDA. And I'd love to see a little bit of PDA in the penalty area.
Well, we'll talk more about that in a little bit, because I'm not sure how much PDA we're going to have in the next game. But we'll get to that later on, because I think we probably got to talk a little bit more about Christian Pulisic. We talked about that first goal.
Yeah.
Shall we talk about the second?
Yeah, well, one final thing I want to say on the first goal is I think he kind of surprised Clint Dempsey. Did you happen, as the camera sort of pans away with Pulisic's celebration, you just see Dempsey being like, oh, I thought I was sliding in for that one. And it almost felt like not exactly a passing of the torch, but more like an 18-year-old sliding in and taking the torch.
So I don't mean to take us down like a negative route here, but I didn't see that as so much of like Dempsey being like, hey, like kind of jokingly. I saw that as Clint Dempsey being kind of annoyed. I do think he wanted, was it to equalize Donovan's goal scoring record? Is that what it was, or to take the lead? I can't remember what it was tonight.
I think his next goal equalizes.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure.
But there were a few different moments in this game. There was one early in the first half. I think I have it in like the 17th or 18th minute that Pulisic basically, it's the one where the defender slips, Josie plays like that kind of reverse pass, and then Pulisic is in on goal. And I think maybe he could have squared it. But again, watch this one at halftime. And I really don't think he could have. I think that ball gets cut out. But after it goes wide, you can see Dempsey kind of very frustratedly gesturing for the ball, and he didn't get it. After that goal, he didn't really celebrate very much. Then I saw a tweet at the end of the game that even with all the players leaving the field, the two people that remained were Bruce Arena and Clint Dempsey talking, and Clint Dempsey was shaking his head in a, I guess, less than thrilled sort of way. So I do wonder if maybe he wasn't so pleased by what happened tonight.
Did you also see when Dempsey came off? I thought he was drawing with someone on the field, but I think it turns out it was Bruce Arena he was sort of having strong, disappointed words with for the decision to sub him out.
Yeah, and I can't say I agree with Deuce. I mean, I can understand if you want to get that goal. I know he's a competitor, but I think, number one, he didn't look that great tonight. I think he had a couple of moments where he did some good things. He had the one where, I forget who had the shot, but then Dempsey chases it down, collects the ball, keeps it going, and then the U.S. get another chance that I think Josie Altidore heads over. But so he had those minutes here and there, but overall it wasn't as consistent of a game, and I do think it was important to get Kellen Acosta some minutes. So I can see why he's frustrated, but I also can see why I don't think he should be frustrated, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's an important player and he's the guy, but Arena makes decisions, right? And the decision to me seemed to be at 1-0 up, Kellen Acosta's coming in to join Michael Bradley in central midfield. So just to add some numbers to the middle and just make sure we don't have an accident here. Yeah,
but this is why we're doing the quick take, hot take, because I'm sure we'll hear some. Hello, partying Ibiza people. I'm sure we'll hear some more about this as I figured. We'll hear more about this in the post-match presser and afterwards. But right now, we're talking just about this game. So with that in mind, now can we go to the second goal?
I'd love to.
All right, let's do it then. So. What part about this did you enjoy the most? Was it the near post finish? Was it the fact that it started from was it John Brooks who collected it and played it to Christian Pulisic?
I believe it was Jeff Cameron.
Yes, it was. You're absolutely right. It was.
Kenwyne Jones was kind of on the break, right? Mm-hmm. And it was Michael Bradley who he ran past and got the defensive side of him. And I thought, oh, Bradley, you've done that thing again where you're not aggressive enough, because I thought he'd just got defensive side and then backed off. Mm-hmm. But then someone comes and joins him. I'm not sure who the player is that joins Bradley. There's a second person there, maybe Acosta. And it essentially forces Jones into a sloppy pass, right? Because that pass goes directly to Jeff Cameron's feet. So it seems like just the two midfielders were playing the angles, force Jones into a bad pass, and then Cameron gives it to Pulisic, and we are away. Off we go.
Yeah, I mean, and that's pretty accurate for what happens, because for a second, I thought I had gone back, because I looked down for a second, I was writing notes, and I looked back up to see that ball in from Josie Altidore, and I got really excited because I thought maybe Pulisic went the entire field, then played it to Josie and continued the run. But in actuality, he dumps it off to Darlington Nagbe. So again, you can't have a goal without Darlington Nagbe on the field.
Oh, I thought it was Yedlin.
Oh, it might have been. Shoot. Well, now you're ruining everything.
I'm pretty sure it was Yedlin. Yeah, because I sort of made a mental note that he's timed that overlapping run again perfectly. So I was really excited to see. Yeah,
why are you doing this to me?
Pulisic is essentially what, the third man running? The phrase that Albert always used to use. I think that's correct. Mm-hmm. And that's always the most dangerous, right? Because it's the guy you're not necessarily paying attention to.
Yeah, and the other guy who definitely wasn't paying attention was Batu, the center back for Trinidad, Sheldon Batu, because I don't know if Pulisic would have been offside, but Batu is definitely about 3 yards behind the rest of the back line, and I think everyone else is kind of paying attention to Josie Altidore. Maybe they think he's going to hold it up a little bit, but they're certainly not paying attention to Pulisic, who times that run well. Josie Altidore plays that ball perfectly, and so they've completely bypassed that. I think it was an attempt at an offside line. I'm not entirely certain, but either way, it's definitely a goal.
It's one of those wobbly offside lines.
Yes.
An offside squiggle.
It's a line that I feel like the people who just walked by you in Ibiza would draw right now.
You want me to run after them and ask them?
Yeah, sure. So, any other big takeaways for you from this game?
Just that I thought Villafania and Yedlin did a really good job of providing the width. Like I heard Holden and Donovan talking about how Bruce Arena had asked Nagbe and Fabian Johnson to stay wide, and I'm not sure they ever did a good job of that, because One of the first, I tried to make notes with the pencil and tiny hotel notepad that I had. It didn't go so well. One of the first notes I tried to scribble was Darlington Nagbe on the right. We've heard from so many Portland fans, from the Portland Timbros, that the problem with him on the right is that he very rarely gets to the end line and crosses it in. Mm-hmm. And I think there was in the second minute or so, I think he gets towards the end line and then he turns and goes backwards and gives it to Michael Bradley. I think Bradley's cross isn't so good. So I started to worry that there would be no service from the wings. But in the end, Yedlin helped provide that by overlapping, and then Villafania did the same from the other side. So it's really exciting to see US fullbacks getting forward, almost like Real Madrid fullbacks, getting forward and providing crosses for goals.
Yeah, and I know there were some moments where Villafania was a little bit sloppy in possession. He had like one header that he went straight to Trinidad that could have been a problem if you maybe had better attackers as opponents.
I remember that.
And I think once or twice he might have gotten beat, but I really am, I'm kind of okay with that because overall he was consistent enough for me, but also I think he just did a really good job of locking down the defense when he needed to, when he knew he didn't have cover, but also he was so important getting forward and kind of forcing overloads and pulling players out of position. If you're going to use your fullbacks to attack, I think he did a really good job, and so too did DeAndre Yedlin, who, again, you can see how... let this be a lesson, people. Don't go to the club and then sit on the bench. Go to the club where you will play consistently, because he obviously has done that, and his game has been much improved in the 2 times I've seen him with the U.S. so far.
So I talked earlier about the timing of the runs forward, right? Yep. I really think that's important to get those right, because then you maximise the sort of the weapon that is his pace. I thought his final ball in was obviously much, much better. You saw he got an assist, right, for Pulisic's first goal, and he's involved in the second goal. So, he's involved in 2 goals. But there's also in this game and in the Venezuela game, I'm guessing you noticed this as well. He kept looking over his shoulder. He was using those rearview mirrors to check the space behind him, which I think is a thing we never used to see him do. And I've got this idea in my head. I can't confirm this, right? I've got nothing to support this, but I'm certain that Rafa Benitez has been telling him, check behind you, check behind you, check behind you. And that's like a habit that DeAndre Yedlin seems to have picked up. And it's obviously a really, really good habit to have, to check space behind you when you're a right back.
Another really good habit. First of all, agree completely. Second of all, another really good habit that made me particularly pleased, and I don't have it in my notes. It might have been the one where Jovan Jones hit the ball like it was a Bebe cross into like Rosette, I believe your people call it. It was a really bad cross.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about Bebe.
That's fair. I was wondering if you'd take that bait. But yeah, it might have been that. It might have been a different cross. But either way, it was Yedlin jumping to block it, and he jumped, faced the ball, arms behind the back. And remember, in the Copa America, we saw him turn, look away, and he got called for the handball. So even just that little moment, I was like, oh, he's learned some stuff. He's willing to risk the face to not concede a penalty.
Maybe Rafa told him he's not as pretty as he thinks.
Yeah, exactly. That's not your moneymaker. Your feet are your moneymakers. Now go do stuff. So, I mean, I just want to say overall, I think I wasn't so disappointed by that first half as I think a lot of people were, but I did see some vulnerabilities that I really am pleased that Bruce Arena was able to adjust in the second half, and I think it shows what consistency can do, that you change a few things, you bring in Josie Altidore for Bobby Wood, you switch Fabian Johnson and Darlington Nagbe, but more or less you kind of let people continue to grow in the roles, get more comfortable, and you can see them getting more and more comfortable throughout the game to the point where by the end, I mean, really, Trinidad, maybe it was altitude, maybe it was just kind of knowing that you're 2-0 down. They really looked kind of beaten in that last 20 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm really into the idea of, because Klinsmann never did this, obviously. I don't want to go back too much to Klinsmann, but he never sort of consistently picked a shape and an 11 and then tinkered with it. And tonight, just that thing of switching Johnson and Nagbe, switching the side, like, whatever we feel about it and whichever way we think is the right way around, at least that's an example of Bruce Arena, head coach, fine-tuning his lineup and formation, right? Like, it's pretty similar to last time, but we'll just change this one thing and see how that works instead. And I feel like the more you fine-tune, the better it is, right? Like when you've got a car, you don't just throw a new engine in every time. You fine-tune it to be the best it can be. So that's what it felt like tonight. And fine-tuning like Michael Bradley's positioning, getting him to step higher, play at the field a bit. That's like a little adjustment that makes things better instead of throwing it all out and starting again with something else. Yeah,
exactly. It's not just like, okay, that didn't work in the first half. Now we're going to do this. We're going to do that. Like it just speaks to the sort of, I'm trying to think of a way to put this that isn't just kind of like boring, but it just speaks to okay, here's what we do. We're going to fix this. Like, it's just a very logical approach that will get the result.
Yeah.
And I think that is to be commended.
You just described Bruce Arena's face.
Yeah, exactly. I saw a lot of that gif of him just like chewing gum with the most bored expression possible, and it was fitting. It was fitting at times. There were some worrying things, and I want to get to those mostly because I feel like they're worrying with Mexico looming. But before we get to that,
we have to. I'm on vacation. I'm trying to have a good time here.
Well, okay. We'll end positive. Don't worry. But before we get to that stuff,
you go ahead.
Let's talk about today's sponsor, shall we? X1 Fuel, pre- and post-workout formula for athletes who expect more from their workouts and on-field performance without sacrificing long-term health.
So X1 Fuel, there's no chemicals. Yep. It's made from things like acai berries, goji berries, all the good stuff like that. It's the pre-ignition formula and the post-workout formula.
Right. So as we've talked about before, the pre-training ignition formula, it gets you going, it gets you energized and ready to go without that crash. The post-training recovery formula combines protein and superfoods to restore energy, build muscle, promote wellness, and get you ready for the next workout. With that in mind, what we're going to talk about here is, first of all, Daryl, I want to know, which player on the U.S. national team do you think we know they probably didn't, but if they did, which one do you think used that ignition formula before this game?
Sorry, I'm laughing because I sort of saw where you were going with this, and I really like it. So, pre-ignition formula before the game, I think Darlington Nagbe. And I think you saw it when he sort of took off that one time for the first goal.
So it was just the blaze of energy. I like that. All right, so then my next question for you.
And the focus.
And the focus, of course. And then my next question for you, which player do you think most needs that recovery formula? Who needs to restore energy, build muscle, and get ready for the next event?
I'm tempted to say Clint Dempsey just because he needs to sort of level out a bit after this game. But probably John Brooks, I think, just to make sure he stays in good shape for the next game. We don't want to see those injuries come back. You know what I mean? So I think it would be a good way to let him recover quickly.
All right, I'm gonna take it in a different direction. I'm gonna say Christian Pulisic, just because we saw him get knocked down a lot. We saw him get pulled down, shoved down, knocked over, kicked a couple times. Maybe he just needs to recover a little bit that way. Then obviously expelled a lot of energy, so maybe just needs a little bit of a pick me up at the end. So I'm gonna say Christian Pulisic maybe needs that recovery formula.
All right, sounds good.
And if our listeners would like either the ignition formula or the recovery formula or any other product from X1 Fuels, they can get $10 off by using the coupon code TOTALSOCCER. That's all one word, all uppercase, at checkout.
Can I say one more thing about X1?
Oh, that.
I know that sort of there are a lot of these sort of ignition and recovery type drinks on the market. We would not be advertising this if we didn't think it was good stuff. Because some of that stuff is kind of snake oily, right? It's the ones that are full of sort of weird chemicals and just caffeine to make your eyes bulge. This one genuinely is made of sort of more natural products. So we're happy to promote this. We stand behind this.
Yeah, it's not like main ingredient steroids or anything like that. If that were the case, maybe we would be less inclined, I'm going to say. So yes, so with that said, thank you to X1 Fuels for being natural and for sponsoring today's show. Now, Daryl, I want to take it down a little bit of a path because there were some things that made me nervous. And I think one of those things was just at times there did seem to be kind of a lack of familiarity and a lack of communication with some of the U.S. players. I tweeted about it that there was a miscommunication between Bradley and John Brooks that led to the Kenwyne Jones header that hit off the post. And it was essentially just that Jones ran through. Bradley had initially marked him but stepped to a midfielder. And Brooks just basically didn't spot him coming and then was slow to react. And it's just moments like that where I think against a team like Mexico, who obviously have some decent attackers, you might be made to be punished for that.
Yeah, I think I saw that Kenwyne Jones header a couple of times as well because they replayed it, right, on Fox.
Yeah.
I saw it as, not that he didn't mark him at all, right? He did pick him up eventually. But then Kenwyne Jones just fooled him with a very simple trick, which is to slow up and then accelerate, which is the most basic of tricks. Yeah. But Brooks just thought, he's slowing down. I don't need to worry about it anymore. And then Jones burst when he knew the cross was coming.
And so it's not to say that that was a consistent problem that John Brooks really struggled and shouldn't play or anything like that. It was just that there were those little moments where I think a better team is going to punish you more. Same thing goes for the first half where they were able, Trinidad were able to bypass that kind of front three press. Then they've got space. A better midfielder is going to be able to pick out a pass from 40 yards and find, say, Javier Hernandez, who we know is a little bit deadly.
Yes.
So I do worry about maybe the U.S. midfield, especially if it is Bradley by himself, being overrun. Do you have any of those concerns?
Yeah, I have that exact concern,
Okay.
and that's why my preference would be to not have sort of that Bradley Pulisic central midfield pairing with Pulisic not really even in midfield, right? He's more like an attacking midfielder. I would prefer maybe for Kellyn Acosta to come in instead.
Agreed,
and that's alongside him.
And I alluded to this earlier. I think that's what you're going to see.
So if you heard the tone of my voice be a bit more cautious, the policia just drove past me.
I see.
We're checking out what I was doing.
I was curious. The noise.
This man shouting about Trinidad on the promenade.
I was curious. We heard some noises earlier. Was that cars passing or was that the waves crashing?
Oh no, there were waves crashing right in front of me. I'm looking out at the Mediterranean.
It's a tough life you live, Daryl Grove. It's a tough life.
This week it isn't. It isn't.
But I do think that's why we saw Clint Dempsey maybe looking a little bit frustrated, is because maybe he knew that he wasn't going to play too much against Mexico. Because I do think if you are going to see a change in this formation to better handle the strengths of Mexico, I think it might be a 4-2-3-1. Josie Altidore up top by himself, potentially. Maybe Bobby Wood, who knows? But I think you might see that midfield pairing of Michael Bradley and Kellyn Acosta, which I have to say would make me feel a bit more confident about handling the pressure that is Mexico.
It would also make me feel, honestly, kind of justified, because I think I've been saying this for 3 or 4 years now, that the US should go with just Michael Bradley on his own against weaker opposition, and then give him a proper, more defensive central midfield partner against tougher opposition. So if Bruce Arena agrees and does the same thing, I think I'm going to apply for my A license.
All right, well, here's your next coaching opportunity. Ready? My question then is, if you do go with more of like a 4-2-3-1, you have the two of them in midfield as like kind of holding midfielders, my guess would be that you kind of keep that front three of like the attacking midfield as it was with Nagbe, with Fabian Johnson, and with Christian Pulisic. That leaves you with one attacker. And I'm curious, would you rather see that attacker be Josie Altidore, knowing that he sometimes struggles as the lone attacker, or would you rather see it Bobby Wood, knowing that Bruce Arena seems to be favoring Josie Altidore at present?
I'd definitely rather Josie Altidore, because if you think of that second goal, that comes when it's essentially Altidore up top with Pulisic underneath him.
All right.
That was the combo, and that worked. And I think you heard Stu Holden pick this out, that Altidore had made like 2 or 3 runs where he tried to get in behind, which is, your job as the farthest forward. But then at some point he sort of realised that wasn't happening, and turned and came back and showed to feet. And then he was able to turn and play that through ball for Pulisic for the second goal. So I'm kind of excited about it. Although I guess the defending from Mexico will be much better than the defending from Trinidad.
Well, who knows? But okay, if you get that right, then I think you definitely deserve some coaching badges. We'll have to get you in there. Go ahead.
Actually, can I raise this with you? Stu Holden had another theory, which is he thinks, or maybe he's heard. He said he thinks, but sometimes that means he's heard, and he can't say that directly on television, right? That the US, the plan was maybe for Dempsey to play the whole game here and then not start against Mexico.
Yeah.
And he suggested, I don't know if you heard this or not, he floated the idea that the reason Dempsey came out in the 60th is that Arena thought, actually, I'm going to use him against Mexico.
Yeah.
So it's like, don't run his legs off before the big game at the Azteca. So what this could mean is, in my head, Fabian Johnson maybe misses out, because I'd say he had the weakest game of all the midfielders.
Yep.
And it's Altidore up top, Dempsey behind, and then Nagbe on the left and Pulisic on the right, and then Bradley and Acosta underneath.
Sounds like an empty bucket to me. I have heard that theory.
No, it's a 4-2-3-1.
Sure. I've heard that theory.
It's a 4-4-1-1.
All right. It's possible. The other theory I've heard, though, comes from Will Parchman, who pointed out that it could just be that Bruce Arena really wants to have a fresh Clint Dempsey to use off the bench and didn't want to risk tiring his legs further at altitude, maybe risk an injury, so you bring him off. You make sure he's 100% when you need him in the second half against Mexico. So there's that possibility as well. Either way, I think we will see Clint Dempsey. Yeah. I do think we'll see Clint Dempsey against Mexico either way. I'm just not sure for how long and if he starts.
Yeah, and the reason I agree with you, like he'll play whether from the start or coming off the bench, is it's just an obvious thing to go with an experienced player who's been there, done that. And I know that Bruce Arena feels the same way. And even if this wasn't Dempsey's best night, that doesn't mean that he's not a really important player, right? What's the Alexi Lalas? Alexi Lalas' 2 sort of maxims are form is fallacy, which is essentially like class is permanent, and don't wear sandals on airplanes.
And drink Slurpees. He talked about that in the pregame. But yes, the sandals on airplanes thing, which we talked about earlier in the week, he and I, it has led to some debate. And it seems like a lot of people are pro wearing sandals on the airplane.
Oh, really?
Yeah, including my mother is visiting, and she said, well, I wore open-toed sandals on the airplane. And I said, well, did you take them off on the airplane? And she, with a look of complete disgust, said no. So I think that maybe is it also a key difference in there. Which
I don't own any sandals. So
I was going to ask. That begs the question: were you barefoot on your plane?
No, sneakers all the way. Sneakers.
You and Jerry Seinfeld, I think that's his motto too.
I got the exit row so I could stretch out.
Ah, there we go. That's good. And then I think we can both agree that Christian Pulisic doesn't start against Mexico, right?
No, rubbish, isn't it? Couldn't even score a hat trick.
I know, right? And I mentioned earlier I couldn't remember who had that shot that Dempsey then collected. It was Christian Pulisic. I should have just guessed that because more often than not it was him creating chances. And basically I bring it back to him because I think if I don't, we'll probably get some tweets saying, why don't you talk more about Christian Pulisic? Because the hyperbole, Daryl, the hyperbole on the Twitter, it's strong. It's strong.
Well, I opened the show comparing him to a drug, so I'm pretty sure we're covered.
That was relatively minor on the scale compared with some of the stuff I was seeing.
We have Saint Christian coming up.
I think I saw. Well, even roughly. I think I saw paraphrasing the old joke of if Christian Pulisic had created the world, he wouldn't have needed a rest. There was that one. There was a lot of those types of jokes. So I wouldn't go that far, but I would say, he was sort of...
That's literally blasphemy.
Yeah, exactly. But I'd say, from the outset, it was Pulisic, winning the ball back, driving at people, looking confident, always looking like he was trying to create something in front of goal, never really being too ponderous on the ball, and I think really kind of set the tone attacking-wise for the U.S.
Yeah, he almost scored the goal of the night. You know the thing when he sort of got in the box and he had a defender up against him?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure exactly what the trick he did, but he kind of opened up just enough space to accelerate, and it looked like he was going to the end line to cut it back. And instead he tried to chip it inside the near post. Mm-hmm. And I think the keeper was just a little bit wise to it and managed to block it. But that would have been an incredible goal. And it was sort of the confidence and quick thinking and, and just the way he's taken responsibility with this team, right? He is not deferring to anyone, including Clint Dempsey. And he also, in the end, finished near post, which is a really hard thing to do. Near post on the second goal.
And I feel bad because I want to say, whenever you hear, the goalkeeper got beat at his near post, you always think he must not be very good. And Williams, the Trinidad goalkeeper, was outstanding in this game. He had some really great saves, a few that he made look maybe a little bit more difficult than they were. But there was the one where I tweeted this. I really thought. I forget, it was the Altidore one where he's chipped in. Williams is off his line and saves it. Then he's up. He goes and he swats the ball away from Christian Pulisic in the box, and he gets the ball. And nine times out of 10, we've seen that the attacker takes that extra touch, gets past the goalkeeper, and that swat comes through on the feet, and it's a penalty. So I think for him not to overcommit there was really impressive. But my favorite play of all was that shot that you just said, where Pulisic hits it near post. It goes off the post and out of bounds, and Williams turns and smiles and gives Pulisic the thumbs up, which I thought was pretty hilarious. As if to say,
but kind of tragically ironic if he gets beat there later on.
Yeah, good point. Speaking of getting beat there later on, I have it on the screen. Mexico in the 35th minute, 1-0 ahead on Honduras, who I believe were playing a 10-0-1 formation from what I've seen so far in this game.
Actually, that's the other thing we didn't talk about when we're talking about Mexico lineup for the US. Is the idea of that back three, because we saw it against Venezuela. And I really enjoyed your interview with Alexi Lalas. He was mentioning that don't think of the back three as this attacking formation. It may be like a Honduran style back five where we just go there to defend. It's not. I don't think it's all that likely, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. It might be that you use that to start. It might be that you use it to change it up if you're trying to protect a 0-0 or a 1-0 or something like that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see the U.S. in a 4-2-3-1 or the equivalent thereof.
Yeah, that would be my preference.
Mm-hmm. Well, you and I don't think right now we're scheduled to talk about it. Maybe we'll do a quick take, hot take, depending on the results. But for now, again, we do have Tom Marshall on the show tomorrow to help preview that USA-Mexico game. And then on Monday, we've got Matt Doyle from MLS Soccer coming on to help review the USA-Mexico game.
Lovely. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to watch it no matter what, right? I'm going to stay up and I'm going to watch it. So if you want to call me afterwards, I'll happily do a quick take, hot take with you.
All right. I could do that. I also want to add that I love that I said we've got Matt Doyle coming on to help review that game, as though we're going to split that share 50-50.
Lovely. Tell him I said hello.
I will. Well, Daryl, I'll say while I'm saying hello to him, I'll say goodbye to you. And thank you for staying up late, watching the game, and taking the time to talk to me, I'll say this morning, since we're talking your time here.
Yeah, good morning to you. I'm thinking about breakfast already.
I feel like you're thinking about breakfast right now. We've both done this before, where we've stayed up like super late into the evening to get shows done, to watch games, to get the show out.
Yeah.
And it quickly is like, oh, it's 5. I'll think about breakfast. And that quickly becomes, and now I'm going to think about sleep for 8 hours.
Yes.
So I think you've got a 30-minute breakfast window. I don't want to cut into that, so I will say goodbye, my friend, and talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, Ella. Bye-bye.